Hey, buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Gilbin is the name, and Hearthstone is the game, and these are my top 8 tips for reaching Legend. One of the most common questions I get is, Regis, how can I improve my rank? How can I keep climbing the ladder? How can I get to Legend? And that's a really difficult question to answer on the spot, on stream, for instance, because it just depends on individual person's play styles, and maybe they're making misplays, maybe they're playing the wrong kinds of decks. But I thought it'd be helpful to sort of summarize my thoughts and my tips for at least 8 things I know that you can probably do better or do differently to improve your chances at winning on the Hearthstone ranked ladder. And if you are consistent enough and you do practice these tips and employ these in your day-to-day games, then I think pretty much everybody out there can eventually reach Legend with a lot of work and learning and patience. So let's go ahead and jump into this list. My first tip is that you just need to keep playing Hearthstone. And I mean that both in a long-term sense and in a shorter-term sense. In the long-term sense, not everybody's going to hit Legend in their first month. In fact, a vast majority of people will never do that. It takes people 6 months. It takes them a year to get to Legend because you have to learn the intricacies of the game. You have to learn the mechanics. You have to acquire cards. You have to understand how metas take shape and how to adjust to metas as you're climbing the ladder. And the only way to acquire that kind of knowledge is to play the game and play the game a lot. So even if you're not hitting Legend in a month or two, even if you're just hitting rank 10 for 6 months straight, you're still building knowledge and learning. And that makes a big difference for eventually getting over that hump and then making the push to Legend. But then also in the short term, you have to play a lot of games to hit Legend. You have to very much commit your time in any given month. Even me, I don't hit Legend every month because I simply don't have the time. Between making videos and everything else, you just run out of time. I have to super sit down and commit to it. I have to find and carve out the time if I truly want to hit Legend, and that goes for other players too. Unless you just have a stupidly high, absurd win rate, it's going to take 100 plus games, 200 plus games. I often say rank 3 feels like about halfway sometimes because you lose win streaks as you get to rank 5, and it takes even longer to accrue all the wins necessary to get to Legend. So you have to keep going. You have to push on. Occasionally, it might not even feel like fun. It might feel more like a grind, but that's what Legend is. And once you hit it, of course, you don't ever have to do it again. You get the card back. You feel satisfied. So unless you're grinding for tournament points or trying to go to BlizzCon or trying to be a pro Hearthstone player, it's a one and done thing. So just pick out a month, pick out a time, pick out a meta that you enjoy, and keep playing because it takes time and it takes games to get to Legend. My second tip is that you should find a deck that works for you and play that throughout the course of your Legend run. I see way too many people who make snap judgments where maybe they lose 2 or 3 games in a row and then suddenly they say, I gotta switch decks. This thing isn't working. I gotta find a new answer, and then they play a new deck and that deck still loses. And the problem is, of course, is that they haven't played very many games with that new deck. They're not an expert. If you pick one deck and you stick with it, you're going to learn how your deck works from front to back. You're going to know every single interaction. You're going to think about all the different lines much quicker and much easier. And that may not sound like a huge advantage, but over the course of 100 plus games, it really does start to add up. Those small snap judgment calls that you can make and the instincts that you develop throughout the course of learning that deck really do go a long way towards making a difference on the climb. Not to mention you learn all your matchups better too. You know exactly what cards you need to keep in a mulligan or toss back, what cards are going to be vital to finding success. You know how to play to your outs. There's just so many different advantages to learning a deck's ins and outs that if you switch decks all the time, you lose those small advantages, and it's much more difficult to overcome. Now, that said, you shouldn't always be totally stoic in your deck choices. You might need to make small adjustments to your deck to make it fit the meta, or find some tech cards that answer what the ladder is looking like at any given time. So you don't have to play the exact list, but play a deck that you like and it works. Of course, it has to be good. You can't play a bad deck consistently and hit Legend. So if you find a good deck that you enjoy playing and it's good enough on the meta, then you need to stick with it. My next tip is that you need to play to your outs. You don't need to play too conservatively. I see this happen all the time. People will get up to high ranks, rank 3, rank 2, maybe even rank 1, and they'll shift their mentality. They'll shift their mode of thought towards, I need to preserve my rank. I need to try to save myself. I need to make sure I don't lose games. So they start focusing on not losing instead of actually trying to win. Especially at those high ranks, you have to play to your outs. And what that means is you have to take those chances. Even if it's a 5% chance to win the game this turn, sometimes you have to take that chance because you know you're going to lose the game in the long run if you don't. So play in ways that give you opportunities to win. Don't just play to not lose. Now that sounds like a kind of cop-out statement or just a philosophical standpoint, but it actually does make a difference in practice. And if you start to think about that and you recognize when those instances arrive and you can make a really ballsy play or a very brave judgment call, often it's the right choice to go for it. Now, that doesn't mean play against logic or play against the numbers, right? You still want to play in the most favorable way, of course, but don't get trapped in that mode of thought where you're just trying not to lose, because that can be very punishing and very harmful to your rate of success. My fourth tip is that you should use tools to help you on your climb. Specifically, I think you should use a deck tracker. There are a lot of great options out there. I most commonly use Hearthstone deck tracker on stream, but frankly, you can't go wrong with any of them as long as they do a couple things. One, they show you your deck list on the side of the screen so that you know exactly what cards you have, and hopefully they also show you which cards you've already drawn and which cards are still left in your deck to draw. They might also track your opponent's cards that have been played. I think that's an incredibly useful thing to have as well. You can remind yourself, oh, they played both fireballs already, so I don't have to dodge fireball. Now, a great Hearthstone player in a vacuum should be able to recognize those things. A Legend player typically will know how many fireballs have been played, but after you've played 100 games, maybe you've played 20 in one sitting, your brain starts to go to mush, right? And every mage game starts to blend together and you don't remember always exactly how many fireballs they had. So just using those tools can give you that slight informational advantage. It's nothing unfair. It's information that's already readily available to you. It just helps you keep that mental state positive and helps make sure that you're maximizing your knowledge at any given point in the game. So there's no reason not to utilize those tools if they can just give you that small advantage or save you that one or two games where you kind of forgot something or you couldn't remember what's left or you needed to judge whether or not you actually have one of those outs that you should play towards. It can make a very big difference. Another side of this is that I think you should actually play in an environment that gives you the tools necessary to be a comfortable, happy Hearthstone player. In other words, playing on your mobile phone might not be ideal because you might occasionally misclick. I know that when I play on my phone, I actually do misclick fairly often, and I've occasionally cost myself games from just having trouble mechanically dragging the card across the screen. So perhaps if you're going to really commit to it, maybe you should play on a desktop if that's available, right? You should play in a room with nice lighting that's not going to make you tired. You should drink the right kinds of things and eat the right kinds of things that keep you happy and healthy. All those little things might sound silly, but if this is a very big endeavor for you to undertake, they can make an impact. Up next is my fifth tip, and that is that you should review your play. Now, for some people, that's going to sound a little out of the ordinary or a little like too much work, but I truly think every player should be recording their games, whether that is using a video capturing process or there are some deck trackers out there which will also just record your plays so you can kind of watch them unfold turn by turn later. In either case, if you can see what you're doing from a third-person standpoint in the future, it can make a big difference as far as judging yourself. In other words, while you're playing a game, it's different as far as a mental state is concerned than when you're outside of a game. You get to review your plays with a little bit more objectivity than subjectivity. So you can say, oh, what if I taken this different line? What if I done this? And you can see in hindsight what cards they had and what lines they took, and you can start to judge those things in context of one another so that you're not always playing in a vacuum like you are in a real game, and you can say, oh, this is the third straight game where I made this exact play in the mulligan against this exact deck, and they punished me in this exact way. So obviously if I start taking this other line, then they tend to do this sort of thing, and so on and so forth, and you can start to really analyze your plays at a deeper level. it's amazing how different the game looks and feels when you can look at it from outside yourself and you have that knowledge knowing how the game unfolded as well. You can really start to see different lines and start to teach yourself a new way to think about Hearthstone that otherwise is impossible. So I would encourage you to find some way to review your plays. It doesn't have to necessarily be every game, but if there's those games where you felt like, man, I really think I could have won that game if I'd taken a different line here or there, and we all have those games, then set some of those games aside to review at a future date. And you might think, oh, I'm losing time if I spend time reviewing my plays, but you don't have to necessarily do it in the month you're committing to the grind to Legend. You can, this can be a 3-month process. You can start reviewing your plays now and start building up that bank of knowledge and expertise to utilize in the future as well. But it's still an important part of everyone's growth and an important part of the process. For people like me, it's great because I get to upload my games and all of you see them and all of you criticize my lines. So I'm sort of using a crowdsourced input as far as my plays are concerned. So that really helps you learn. That may not be an option for everybody, although certainly you could probably find a forum or somewhere on Reddit or share them, in my comments as well, and people will be happy to provide some feedback and insights to you. You can also theoretically hire a coach if that's something you wanted to do to help them review your plays as well. A lot of people offer those services. I personally don't, but you can Google that and find tons of great coaches and professional players to help you review your plays as well, which again will go a really long way. So just be sure that you're thinking critically about your own style of play and constantly trying to improve yourself, not just from within the game, but from outside of it as well. My 6th tip is that tilt will kill you. If you're not familiar with the term tilt, that essentially means when you get frustrated, you get burned out, you feel like you got robbed, and you're just in a general negative mental state about Hearthstone. And frankly, Hearthstone is a game which is very easy to generate tilt because there are a lot of those random effects where you feel like things just didn't go your way and it puts you in a really sour mood. A lot of people would describe this as being salty, for instance. But tilt is a very real thing. It's not just a Hearthstone phenomenon. It happens in other games like poker as well. And it has been proven and shown to really make a negative impact on your actual quality of play. You start changing the way you think about decisions. You start thinking about odds and logic differently than you would otherwise. So you can't always fairly judge the numbers and the lines of play that make the most sense because your brain is basically cheating you into thinking in a different way than you normally would, and it's really hard to separate emotion and feeling from the more logical sides that dictate the best kinds of play in Hearthstone. So if you find yourself getting tilted often, there are probably a couple solutions to avoid that problem. First and foremost, you can just take small breaks. If you get a really bad run, if something really terrible happens, go take a 30-minute nap. Go grab a snack. Go chill out watching a Netflix TV show. Give your brain some time to separate itself from that negative action so that when you come back, you're a little more fresh and a little rejuvenated. You can also just try to go into games and make it more about fun than about results. If you're super results-oriented all the time, then you can get bogged down in those losses instead of focusing on the fact that ultimately Hearthstone is still a game. And if you don't hit Legend this month, you can do it next month too. And no one game is going to dictate whether or not you actually reach Legend. Everybody loses. Everybody has those bad runs. You might lose 5 in a row, but that doesn't mean you're not going to hit Legend. You just got to win 5 in a row. And good luck will turn on your side. That's how randomness works. It doesn't go, a 50% chance isn't heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails every single time. A 50% chance is heads, 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 tails, 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 heads, 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 tails, 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 right? So occasionally you're going to catch that streak of tails and ride yourself to Legend on a crazy win streak. You just have to be consistent and keep playing, as our first tip told you, but not letting those negative downturns, the bad variance, get in the way of your success and break you mentally in a way that you just end up losing more than you ever should have in the first place. My 7th tip is a little bit more abstract, but I think it's a really important one, and it stems from something I've heard a lot, which is that a lot of people will focus on how many stars they've lost on their climb and get really discouraged by that fact. For instance, somebody might say, I was all the way up at rank 2, 3 stars, and then I lost 7 straight games, and now I'm back to rank 4. All my progress is lost. All my progress is wasted. And I'd like to challenge that premise and say, no, you are where you are. You're rank 4. The fact that you were ever rank 2 is not actually relevant. You're just where you are. You're rank 4. You were rank 4 before and you climbed to rank 2. Guess what? If you're rank 4 now, you can climb to rank 2 again. Now, I do completely sympathize and understand how frustrating that can be when it feels like, oh, I was only 6 games away from Legend, but now I'm 10 games away from Legend, or whatever the random numbers might be. And that feels very agonizing because you realize you have to win even more, and every game seems like a struggle and seems like a fight. So I totally get it. I totally understand, but I just don't think that's a healthy attitude to take into the game, because it doesn't matter how many stars you lost, right? Sometimes, I just discussed, you got to win 5 in a row, to lose 3 in a row, to win 4 in a row, to lose 8 in a row, to lose 5 in a row. That's just how streaks work. That's how variance is. So it doesn't matter what any given 10-game stretch feels like and whether you lost 10 or not. It's about the entire journey, and there are upswings and there are downswings. That's absolutely inevitable. But don't get caught up on how many stars you just lost and let that determine whether or not you're going to continue playing. A lot of people say, I just can't do it. I'm so frustrated. I give up. I'm just going to end the season at rank 4. Obviously, you're never going to hit Legend if you keep doing that. So don't let that ladder anxiety or the focus on lost progress keep you from achieving, because obviously you can do it again. You just did it. You can still get there. You can still get back, and you might ride a win streak all the way to Legend. Who knows? You got to keep playing, as I mentioned in my first tip, to really know just how high you can go. And if you've gotten that high, I promise you, you can hit Legend. You just have to keep at it and not let yourself get down on lost progress. And then for my 8th and final tip, it's really a pretty simple one. Sometimes you just have to play an OP deck. Finding the most overpowered, the most successful, the highest win rate deck in the meta, playing that deck, learning that deck inside and out, and using it to brutalize the ladder is often your best chance at success. On a side note there, playing a really fast deck is often a good way to climb up the ranked ladder very quickly, obviously, as well, but very effectively too, because you just play games so much faster. You ride into those win streaks faster. You give yourself more time to work with. Losses aren't nearly as psychologically punishing as if you play with a 20-minute control deck and you still lose a game. Not to mention, Hearthstone is just a fast game that rewards aggressive style deck. So even if that's not your preferred playstyle, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and play a really fast, overpowered aggro deck to hit Legend. Now, some people, for instance, hate Pirate Warrior and say that it's a cancer deck and nobody should play it. But if this is your first time trying to hit Legend and Pirate Warrior, or whatever the cancer deck of the moment might be, is your best opportunity for making that achievement, then do it. Screw the haters. Play the good deck. Give yourself the best possible opportunity to win, right? A deck with a 51% win rate can certainly get you to Legend, and you might even say, I play that deck with a 55% win rate. I'm so good. That's great. You could use that to hit Legend too, but imagine that there's a better deck with a 55% win rate. I'd have to guess you could probably play that up to a 60% win rate if you're that good, so you just hit Legend that much more easily and that much faster. So don't handicap yourself with anything less than a perfectly optimized Tier 1 OP deck, because that's going to make you hit Legend faster and with a lot more consistent and reliable success. And there you have it. That's my list. My 8 personal tips for hitting Legend in Hearthstone. Now, I do have to say a lot of those probably focused on more psychological aspects of the game instead of like in-game strategies or anything of that sort. That's probably due to my background, but it's also because I think people really underestimate that side of gaming, and competitive gaming in particular. Making sure that you're in a happy place and the right mental state can go a long way towards giving you both the mental fortitude and the endurance to hit that grind and grind up to Legend, but can also really just help your decision-making skills along the way as well, which of course in Hearthstone is incredibly important. But I'm sure a lot of you guys out there have your own tips, what helps you most on the ladder. Whether you've hit legend or not, I'd still love to hear your take, what things you found the most success with when trying to grind it out on the Hearthstone ranked ladder. So leave those in the comments below. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, game on.